Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Regina Pasya Salsabila and I am an English literature student at UIN Sunan Gunung Jati Bandung with student ID number 12350300165. So, in this video, I'm going to explain the translation result and analyze the technique and method that I use to translate an English text into Indonesian for translations course assignment. So the text that I chose is an excerpt from a Harry Potter fan fiction titled On the Nature of Daylight by Icarus. Also, in this analysis, I'll explain how I applied certain methods and techniques to preserve the meaning, nuance, and the beauty of the narrative in the target language, which is Indonesian. So without any further ado, let's start to the topic. So, this is the original text, and this is the result of my translation. Now let's talk about the translation methods that I used. In this text, I use three main translation methods. The first one is semantic methods. For example, there is she didn't know where she was headed. She didn't really care either. Was translated as dia tidak tahu kemana ia akan pergi. Dia juga tidak peduli. So this is semantic method. Why I use this method? Because this method preserves the meaning and emotion of the original text without being rigidly bound to the grammatical structure of the source language. So the result feels natural while staying true to the original nuance. Next, the second method is communicative method. For example, there is even the hundreds of books in the Hogwarts library couldn't distract her tonight was translated as bahkan ratusan buku di perpustakaan Hogwarts pun tak mampu mengalihkannya malam ini. This method is communicative method because this method ensures that the message is conveyed in a way that Indonesian readers can easily understand without losing the essence or the meaning of the original text. And the last method is adaptation method. For example, there is she sighed and wiped her eyes, only then realizing her wand was still in her hand, was translated as ia menghela nafas panjang dan menyeka matanya, baru menyadari tongkat sihirnya masih tergenggam erat di tangannya. So this method is adaptation method because this method adds descriptive element like erat or firmly to create a richer and more contextually appropriate expression in Indonesian. Now let's talk about the translation techniques that I used. Aside from methods, I use various techniques too, such as linguistic amplification. For example, there is Hermione cast a quick look around to make sure she was alone, then made for the metal gate that blocked off the most dangerous and powerful books that Hogwarts had to offer. Was translated as Hermione dengan cepat melirik sekeliling untuk memastikan tidak ada siapapun sebelum berjalan ke gerbang besi yang memisahkan buku-buku paling berbahaya dan penuh kekuatan di Hogwarts. There is additional words like penuh kekuatan. These words were included to clarify the descriptions and add a dramatic effect. The second technique is literal techniques. For example, there is Lectio Nefastus was translated as Lectio Nefastus. This spell name was kept literal to maintain the authenticity and cultural identity of the Harry Potter universe. The next technique is pure borrowing technique. For example, there are Hogwarts and familiar. These words was translated as Hogwarts and familiar. These words were left unchanged since they are internationally recognized and relevant to the narrative. Before we move to the next technique, you might wonder why Lectio Nefastus is considered as literal techniques while Hogwarts is borrowing. Well, the answer lies in their linguistic origins. Hogwarts is a fictional property name from Harry Potter universe and doesn't have lexical meaning outside that context. It is entirely fictional and not derived from any specific language. Meanwhile, Lectio Nefastus has clear roots in Latin. Lectio means reading or lessons, and nefastus means forbidden or ominous. These words pre-exist in Latin, making it suitable for literal translations. So borrowing, it's used when a word or phrase from the source text is directly borrowed, often without changes because there is no suitable equivalent or because the term is widely recognized in its original forms. For example, Hogwarts is a unique place name with no translations, so the term is borrowed. Literal technique, on the other hand, involves translating a term directly, word for word, based on its lexical meaning. In this case, although Lectio Nefastus is a fictional term in the Harry Potter universe, its meaning comes from universally recognized Latin. Thus, the literal technique was applied. So the next technique is transposition technique. For example, the shelves were closer together in this part of the library, not normally needing to accommodate more than one person at a time, was translated as rak-rak di bagian ini berdiri lebih rapat, cukup untuk satu orang saja yang melintas di antaranya. So why I use this technique? Because the sentence structure was adjusted to better fit the descriptive grammar of Indonesian. The next technique is calque techniques. For example, there is restricted sections was translated as bagian yang dibatasi. This techniques translates the term directly but adapts it to the structure of the target language. And the last technique is particularization technique. For example, the pronoun she in this text was translated as Hermione and he is Ron. So general pronouns was replaced with specific names to avoid ambiguity and clarify the narrative for Indonesian readers. So, I used semantic method and transposition techniques to preserving narrative beauty, since this is fictional works, and linguistic amplifications to providing familiar language style, and literal and borrowing techniques to respecting the original work's identity. So in conclusions, for this text, I applied various methods and techniques to create translations that is not only faithful to the original text but also relevant and accessible for the target audience, which is Indonesian readers. So I think that's all from me. I'm sorry if I made mistakes. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.